Hey there. So let's talk about consent. It's a big issue. And before we start, this is primarily sexual consent. Obviously, there's many other kinds of consent issues, and we should list those as well. Where, supposedly people are in jobs that they don't want to be in. But that's certainly an option. Quite possible. But let's just talk about sexual consent within a community environment or festival or party. Since it seems to be a common issue, and I'd like to solve it. Number one is let's have the conversation. Well, and I would like to point out something else before we start with all that. And it is that we are destined to dislike the people we have the most contact with in the most extreme way. The most extreme people who are going to hurt you are the people closest to you. You're more likely to be murdered by somebody you know than somebody you don't. And so in our evaluation of violence and abuse, look to the people around you. And that's one reason I'd like to think about who we decide to have around us, and that we not be victims of random people. In particular, you'll find that this is the case between men and women, where if I like women, which I do, for special times, and they like me, then who's most likely am I going to get hurt by? Women. So I have many cases of things going either just fine or occasionally mediocre, just because that's how things go sometimes. But lots of just the best times in my entire life have been with women. And yet if I complain about the 2 bad experiences I've had, maybe 3 depending on how you count it, whatever, but 2 really bad experiences where a woman has lied about me, damaged me socially, poisoned my entire project and life, destroyed me in the minds of my friends. It's been a horrible thing that she did. And she did that because we were together for a while in a very complex situation. And she's just a freak anyway. Like, she'd probably agree with that. I certainly am a freak. And so online all the time, I'm on a lot of different forums. I have a lot of time to read things and see what people think. And so you'll see just horrible feelings people have about men because, reasonably, they've been hurt by men worse than anybody else in their life. And that doesn't mean that it was a high percentage of men that hurt them. They're not getting hurt by all men. And of course you'll see the not all men, not all women reaction to lots of statements. And it's usually true. I've only been seriously damaged by a tiny percentage of my interactions with women, and then I've had lots of just normal people interactions, people who happen to be women. But I've had wonderful ones with people I was intimate with. Now, turn that around, and you can have sympathy for women. The problem is, I see tons of sympathy for women, and none for men. If I complain about being abused in any way, it'll get turned around on me. And this happens to women in different forms as well. But, I'm supposedly misogynistic or anti-woman because I'm anti-being abused by women. And I have more complex thoughts on that as well, actually. It gets really complicated. And so I could so easily say things that would piss off supposed feminists who are actually total traitors to feminism. They're really damaged, evil people. Let's turn it around, though, and look at the intense hatred that some people have for men's rights activists, MGTOW, which means men going their own way, which I guess I have gone my own way, but I didn't do it against women. I did it against civilization itself. So don't blame me for going my own way. I'm not really doing it as a man. I just happen to be one. And, if you look at the reverse, if women go and they isolate and they say, we're a women's only space, we're a women's only community, people are like, great, that's good for you, that's empowering, it's great. If men do it, then they're incels or something horrible. I mean, they could be monks. So I guess if you have the excuse of God, then that's more okay. But the point is, I'm sympathetic as I read some of these things that are really horrible, because they're generalizing about men and me and claiming I do things that I don't do, at all. I'm very protective of women. In fact, society in general is protective of women, which women aren't really aware of. Many of them are clueless. The degree to which they have great privilege, the degree to which they're running the matriarchy. Oh, that sounds weird, doesn't it? We're being told all about the patriarchy, and it's like, well, and some women will then backtrack on that when you say, well, I'm not those things. And like, well, I don't mean you. It's just that the people they identify as being the greatest oppressors in the world are men. And it could be very true. Men are the ones going to war to kill people, although they're mostly killing other men, although there's a lot of excess violence among civilians, of course, and sometimes horribly so. I mean, I can't even imagine these men that fucking rape people as part of war or really anything else. I don't even, to be honest, a little personal, but I don't think I could get it up for that. I mean, I like enthusiastic consent. I want to be wanted. I don't even, I'm not against prostitution. I think it should be legal and safe, and that women should profit greatly from it. That's fine. And men too, if they can work that out. But I don't happen to patronize that just because I really want people who want to fuck me to really want to fuck me. I don't have to pay them. It kind of just ruins the vibe for me, But anyway, so back to these women online. They've been damaged, and they've seen how dumb men are. And what they haven't seen is how absolutely evil women can be. And so sometimes I've thought about commenting. I probably did at some point. It's pointless. Totally pointless. Just pisses women off. They're not really good at thinking about these things. And the ones who are men who are really damaged aren't really good at thinking about it either. They're just too damaged. Well, I'm not too damaged. I'm partly damaged. But I'm not damaged enough to hate women. I've never been a huge fan of your stereotypical man anyway. But my friends that I have that are men are not stereotypical men. In fact, I don't even know stereotypical men. I think in a company I worked at once, there were some guys, and they were all Christian and into sports and stuff. But even they weren't like total assholes. There was assholes among them. But all this stuff about gender war seems unnecessary. And I guess my point is that you're inherently going to dislike the gender of interest that you're involved with, which must be very confusing for gay men and lesbian women, because they can't have gender hatred the same way. They have to put their hatred on the individual, which is far preferable, by the way. Lesbian women have one of the highest domestic violence rates that there is, as far as we know, on something that statistics are very hard to gather regarding. So that's tricky. They have the highest divorce rate. They're the least economically successful. Gay men, I don't know what their domestic violence rates are. I assume that any intimate relationship is going to have some domestic violence. And I guess physical violence is what I'm referring to. If you include verbal violence, oh my God. My experience with women is that they're just absolutely horrible. Extremely successful at ripping you to shreds. And I don't know why they do that. I think it's because, I don't know if they watch too many telenovelas or soap operas where they just haven't been hit in the face a lot, for being an asshole, because people don't want to hit women. I've never hit a woman in my life. I got accused of it. Not with the police, of course, because then they'd have to have evidence and reality would have to hit. But, if a woman says somebody hit them, there's this kind of believe women thing. And so people are going to believe them. And they need no evidence. And they won't even necessarily talk to you about it. You'll just lose them as a friend. It's a horrible thing. If you think women are good, you're an idiot. Or very inexperienced. And I thought women were good. I was an idiot and I was inexperienced. And I was lucky because, I was a pretty attractive guy and women were generally seeking me out. And so I never felt any need. I forgot my machete. I was going to cut these fucking plants by here because they're annoying me every day. Arr. Look, there's people who benefit from this. There's people who benefit from dividing people. And they divide them on race. They divide them on sexual preference. They divide them in any way you can think of. Religious background, which is somewhat more reasonable. Because you do actually disagree on some basic beliefs. And I'm not going to, and nothing I say in this video is going to be defending men or women, except as human beings. And I believe, I'm hoping, with all my heart, that most of them are pretty darn nice people. And that most of them, in their interactions with others, want to make that person feel good and happy and fulfilled. However, there's power dynamics in any relationship. Any of them. And people seek them out. They're not always bad. You look at age gap relationships. Well, we could say the male is the victim of being used by the younger, pretty woman. Or we could say that the older woman is using the young man. But we don't have much sympathy for that because men are assumed that they can take care of themselves and make choices. While we somehow assume, and it's feminists who think this, anytime I use the word feminism, I don't know what it means. But some feminists think that women are inherently stupid and can't make their own decisions, which seems like a very opposite of a feminist point of view. Especially since some of these women were younger and they were in that same position. And they liked going out with older guys because they get resources, because they get knowledge, they get opportunity, and it's fun. And, when I was a young man, I was pretty much worthless. Now, luckily, I was pretty good looking. I had no idea at the time I was good looking. My mom told me, but you can't trust moms about that. But I look at pictures now and I'm like, holy shit. Because she wanted me to go into modeling and stuff, which that just sounded really boring to me. Like, I guess I just don't have a ton of respect for just walking around looking good with some clothes or something. It's like, I just don't care. I'm not into fashion. I was trying to do things that were more useful in my view. And I'm not insulting models. If that's the option you want to have, go for it. Have fun. Just not for me. So there's benefits to age gap relationships. And right now there's like tourism of older women going to visit countries to be special friends with younger men. And nobody thinks that's horribly abusive. There is one country that doesn't like it, that tourism is increasing so much. I read about it, and it starts with a G, I think. I don't know if it's Ghana or I don't know where the hell it is. I forgot. I don't remember if it's in Africa or the Caribbean, but it's somewhere in there. And I see, gay relationships where there's an age gap, and like gay male relationships, and people don't criticize those very much. That's considered really normal. And they don't criticize it because they're sexist against women. And it's the older women that are the most pissed off about it, okay? I just talked to a friend of mine online, webcam chat, and he admitted, I brought up the topic, and he admitted, yeah, I like younger women. And I'm not talking about children. And no, it's not fucking pedophilia if they're 25 years old. Okay, they know exactly what they're doing, often traveling for free. And you can insult them for that, but when I was younger, and 22 or stuff, a lot of really hot women that I was attracted to were not really interested in me because I wasn't wealthy yet, and I wasn't as experienced and cool as the other guys that were wanting them. And so now I'm an older guy, and a bit older. I mean, being mid-range old, I see as no big deal at all. 25-year-olds with a 45-year-old, big fucking deal. And I don't care about this, oh, you're old enough to be their parent or something. At this point, there's women I'd fuck that I'm old enough to be their grandparent. But guess what? I have a vasectomy. They're not my fucking granddaughter. So that's just dumb. People say all sorts of other dumb things about age gap relationships. But I'd be perfectly happy. My last relationship was an age gap relationship, and the one before that too. And one of those went well, and the other one, the chick was nuts. That was my number 2 bad experience I've had with women, which isn't too bad considering how many there have been. So, if you're somehow stuck in this trap, this is true of rightists and leftists, conservative, liberals, etc. If you're on an extreme of hating the other side, if you're a woman who fundamentally hates men, and I've known women like that who won't admit to it, but functionally they hate men. They just see them as a tool for resources. And they pretend they like you, or they even pretend themselves that they like you. But functionally they're abusive, they're bad people. And likewise, it's not all hard for me to imagine that, of course, women have had terrible experiences with men. Their expectations are astoundingly high, and they don't get met. And I'm not going to base things on what YouTube videos I've seen, but I have seen YouTube videos that are like women who are like a 6, and it's okay to quantify people and objectify them by number. I checked, it's in Brian's book of shit that makes sense. And they think they're a 10. And it's like, not even close. I'm not a fucking 10. I'm probably, at this point, a 6. I'm kind of older now. I got the gray beard, which I think looks great. And maybe some other people do too. I think gray hair is cool. And that's on women as well. I got a friend of mine. She's gone totally gray. Actually, I think 2 of them have. And I'm kind of happy they haven't dyed it, I'm happy that they just let it go naturally gray. It's gorgeous. It's fine. It's not like it's going to fool me on how old they are. I've known them for 35 years or whatever. And I don't think it's bad to be old. Not if you don't become really bitter and decide the other gender is so horrible because you have had legitimately bad experiences. I don't know, what else do I got to say about that? If you're pissed off anything I've said, I don't really care. I'm trying to talk about peace. I'm trying to talk about getting rid of the gender war. And if you have had bad experiences with the other gender, or the gender of interest to you, I don't want to be heteronormative, I guess. The things I'm saying apply to gay people as well. Then maybe you're hanging out with the wrong people. And this is not victim blaming. This is suggesting that perhaps if you're having bad experiences, you should not do what you're doing, or more importantly, who you're doing, and you could pick differently. I mean, a lot of people talk about hypergamy and the differences in men and women and how they look for things and all that. And it's like, yeah, it's true. Men and women are different. And they're also very much similar. Both. In different ways. And not all women are like all women. And not all men are like all men at all. There's more overlap than there are differences. And I've written about this, like overlapping bell curves, of like what things we could measure are different between men and women. Like we can pretty safely say that men are taller than women. But there's lots of men who are shorter than women. This is overlapping bell curves on the heights of two genders, right? I think we can look at graphs that would show men and women are pretty dang different. Like, women can have babies and men don't. They can make lots of sperms that encourage babies to occur. And I'm going to skip the whole transgender stuff. That's a different class of person. And I'm not going to pretend that things occur that don't happen. I'm completely aware that a trans man can have a baby, but they're a trans man, they're not a man. Okay? It's a special category, and there's no insult being implied there. I know 2 trans men, and I'm not going to judge anything about them. I haven't even had conversations with them about that. Oh, I know 3. No, one guy went to become a woman. But it's okay that people are confused about these issues. I don't think there's really anything hard to figure out. Obviously, because people conflate these issues with a whole bunch of others, like which bathroom to use. It's just like design bathrooms so anybody can use them and have privacy and security while they're using a goddamn bathroom. Problem solved. I solved that here on my own land. I didn't even think about it. It never occurred to me to have female and male bathrooms. Now, there is a special exception where I have pee spots for people who would prefer to sit down and pee versus those who would like to stand up and pee. And those are only for pee. Because everybody sits down to poo as far as I know. And I don't care what gender they are, but it will stereotypically be men who stand up to pee and women who sit down to pee. Stereotypically. That doesn't cause any fucking problem. I do have problems with some trans things. Like I think if you are a XX definitely male, I realize that there's a very small percentage of people who are intersex or other stuff. But this is not, we can accommodate those things. We can consider those things, but this is not statistically an importantly large group to think about that much. So we solved the basic problem of the same behaviors that are bad in men and women. It doesn't matter whether they're transgender or gay or not. Like you shouldn't be abusing children. And I have known a woman who is minor attracted. That's the polite way to say it. And was working with children. And I don't know details of how that shook out. I wasn't with her long enough to find that out. And didn't really consider my business to investigate it, but I was kind of happy when she was no longer working with children. So, believe me, women are sexually just as freaky as men. They have just as many twisty things. We just, think that they're made of sugar and spice, and that boys are ugly and dumb and made of bad things or whatever. Sorry, I can't be more eloquent, but this is all improv, right? So I guess as I think about setting up a space for this, I don't know that I want to invite people into it who have some underlying hatred of the other group. Just like I don't think I would want to invite people who are militant vegans, who think that, if you raise chickens and rabbits, that you're a horrible murderer and must be destroyed. I'm not going to invite them. I'm not going to invite people who are into white supremacy, even though I'm white. I'm not into those people. I don't like that general vibe. At the same time, I'm not going to invite browner people who think that all white people are bad. Either one. Fucking just cut them out. Cut them out of society. And so similarly, for women and men, if your biggest thing, the issue you're always posting about, if you're always judging men being men, if a man can't tell you anything without mansplaining to you, or if you have been so damaged by women that you hate all women, and everything gets turned into a fucking gender issue that doesn't need to be at all. Then I don't want to invite you. I don't want to know you. Now, maybe I can invite people if they're willing to repent from that viewpoint. Just because someone is a racist or a sexist at one point doesn't mean they have to stay that way. In fact, having exposure to an environment that is specifically not racist, not genderist, not throwing some other ists and isms and things, maybe would be really enlightening for them. And they could say, wow, I'm respected for who I am as an individual, or criticized for who I am as an individual. Because some people can't take any criticism, and if you criticize them, that threatens their identity of whatever the hell they are. And it's like, we all have to be open to criticism. And, of course, it's really dumb to criticize people based on these relatively trivial demographic attributes. But, and so don't do that. If you're pissed off at a culture or a person, then be pissed off at the actual thing. Because even though there's correlations between activities of men, women, people of different races, skin colors, people from different countries, people from different spiritualities, which is really a tough one for me since I'm suspicious as hell of anyone who believes in a spiritual world that obviously does not exist. And I think they're kind of dumb and potentially dangerous. That's my bigotry, and I'm aware of it at least. But I've also hosted people who believe in a spiritual world, and they do not inflict that upon me. They don't use that against me. And guess what? I had no problem with them at all. I've hosted Mormons, Muslims, Christians, obviously, Hindu, there's some other, I'm forgetting who else, but they've all been just fine. The worst people have been the pseudo-spiritual ones who think that essentially they're God, and that any weird thing they make up I have to agree with, or I'm, this ignorant dumbass. And so I got my own bigotry issues there. But I'm aware of them, and I'm seeing how I can still work with people despite that. And so I understand that women are bad, that men are bad, that people from Paris are bad. But not all of them. But they are not ashamed of being assholes at all, some of them. Oh my God. And I guess maybe people could break away from their bigotry. And, maybe I can be accepting that somebody believes in a God that I don't think exists. As long as that God isn't too specific and trying to meddle in my life, that's going to bother me. Anyway, there's some random thoughts for you. I don't know how that will actually affect my invite list, but I mentioned some people I would just skip entirely. I just don't want to deal with it. They need to go heal. They need to meet people in the group that they hate who are not bad people and get over their bigotry before I want to deal with them. This is the advanced class here, and I'm not willing to deal with poisoning, toxic people of whatever kind. Goodbye.